Greetings again. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. This begins the second video about LIL. In the last, I covered Crowley meeting Don Jesus Medina and joining Freemasonry. The rift in Mather's Golden Dawn, Crowley being told to initiate, the surrounding influences of magic that went into forming the Order of the Lamp of Invisible Light, and its ritual in full detail. In this video, I will cover how and why an initiate in the USA revived LIL, creating the Congregation of the Lamp of the Invisible Light, the surrounding influences of that event, what the current order is about, the Cube of Space, a breakdown of its rituals, and my own experiences with CLIL. It is a lot of ground to traverse, and I'll get right into it. Part 4, the revival of the Lamp of the Invisible Light. Frater AL and initiate RI met in the early 2000s. Frater AL is from Mexico City and had since moved to California. On a trip back to visit his family, they met. They long stayed in touch and a friendship was established. He soon left the Bay Area in California and some couple of years later was living in Jersey City, New Jersey, though his livelihood was and is in New York City. He is a member of the Freemasons, a member of the Temple of Thelema, and practitioner of yoga and the occult now for over 25 years. Mexico City has a rich culture of magic and spirituality, from the local indigenous religious revival and claimed lineages to the Aztec and other tribes and their pantheons, to various Afro-Caribbean derivatives such as Santeria, Palo, Quimbanda, and Ifa, to local witches and the huge Sonora witchcraft market, to devout Catholics whose worship is not in any way as dry as it is here in the United States of America, and their celebrations of holidays such as the Day of the Dead. Mexico City is a rich place for spiritual devotion and magic. And yet, Frater AL and initiate RI both knew that there was no Thelemic outreach of any sufficient kind. In 2008, they decided to collaborate on a ritual to help change this a little. They wanted, quote, something that was overtly and specifically related to Thelema, end quote. So as they talked over a few months' time, the ideas became more and more concrete. The inspiration came from Crowley's original order in Mexico City, the Order of the Lamp of the Invisible Light. Since it was going to start in Mexico, and that Crowley did this work in Mexico, it made sense to look into LIL. The hermit and the lamp are undoubtedly iconic symbols of the occult, and it became easy to accept this as a means to starting an order in Mexico City. The next idea which had to be puzzled was, what would that order's ritual have looked like if the law had already been received at its founding? They both felt it correct that the Book of the Law would be central to this ritual. A quick segue must be made to mention that in the early 2000s, Frater AL had been working with friends on a ritual that centered on the three alchemical principles of Buddhism, aka the three jewels, Buddha representing yellow, Dharma representing blue, and Sangha representing red. This idea had long stuck with Frater AL, and thus he thought on the three alchemical principles and wanted to incorporate them in a Kabbalistic and Thelemic fashion. The way he chose to do this is through the Cube of Space. There is, in the ritual, which I will get to later on, a way in which light is extended via the three alchemical principles present on the altar. Frater and initiate RI agreed that they wanted this to be not only for those advanced in magic, but also for those new to the law. And for that, their answer was to crunch as many Thelemic ideas as possible into the ritual, but without overloading it energetically in a way that could make anyone ill-prepared unstable. Coupled with the alchemical principles came the parts of the ritual such as theurgy, pranayama, a middle pillar variation, and selections of holy book passages that could aid specific parts of the ritual. It was then thought best to make it so that a group could participate. The idea is that this is not for people to stand idly by while the officiant performs the ritual. It is very interactive. Piece by piece, the ritual came together, and once nearly done, Frater AL passed it off to initiate RI for a final edit and approval. It was done. They met again, and the ritual was performed for the first time in the fall of 2009 in Mexico City. Since then, there are 4 sanctuaries of the Congregation of the Lamp of Invisible Light. Number 1, Sanctuary of the Red Flame in New York City. 1 in Mexico City, 1 in Tijuana, and a final one in Canada that is temporarily inactive but subject to open again in the near future. Then there is the hope that we will continue to grow, and my personal hope that number 5, Sanctuary of the Open Eye, opens either in Brooklyn or Jersey City when the opportunity presents itself. Part 5, The Cube of Space. There is a wonderful book about the cube of space that I highly recommend. Under an eponymous title, it was written by Kevin Townley. In it, he breaks down the origins, mathematical/geometric formulas, as well as all of the magical symbolism one can want connected with the cube of space. In the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, also coined the key to the Zohar, we delve into the proper structure of the cube of space. Basically, each major point corresponds with the Hebrew character, and each character has a long series of corresponding symbols, deities, etc. If you are unfamiliar with the Kabbalah, I highly recommend Israel Regardie's Garden of Pomegranates, then Crowley 777, and other Kabbalistic writings. One can go crazy with the Kabbalah, especially if you are fluent in Hebrew, so I will not go too far off the rails in a video not meant for a long intro to this subject. I will mostly remain on point and talk about the cube of space as it pertains to CLIL. Basically, there are 6 faces, with the Hebrew letters that correspond with the 6 classical planets of astrology, excluding Saturn for the moment. The 12 zodiacal letters correspond to the 12 lines that connect the corners of the cube. Then the 3 remaining letters that represent the hermetic fire, water, and air elements for the lines connect these 6 faces. Lastly, there is Saturn, which doubles for Earth and symbolizes manifestation. Saturn is in the center of the cube, where the 3 lines of the elements intersect or converge. Now that this basic outline of the cube of space is sketched, I am almost ready to go into an explanation of CLIL's main ritual. I will only here add 2 things. 1, the cube of space is a map of existence, its creation, and how manifestation occurs, much like the tree of life itself, minus the sphere of Kether, which is implied as beyond and yet all-encompassing in and around the cube. Light becomes matter as it passes through the alchemical process of transmutation, passing through each path, being changed little by little until it is dense and earthen, for lack of a better term. Number 2, secondly, the 3 elemental letters in the middle of the cube play double as not just elements, but also the 3 highest alchemical principles, for they correspond with the 3 primary colors: yellow, attributed to air and alchemical mercury; red, attributed to fire and alchemical sulfur; and blue, attributed to water and alchemical salt. The 3 elements and the 3 alchemical principles are inexplicitly linked. For to get the salt of a substance in the most basic form of alchemy, a spagyric, the medium is first placed in a liquid, water. The medium is strained from the liquid after a time, and then meets fire, sulfur, until it is burned to a fine ash. This ash is brought back into the liquid, and the salt is thus extracted after a time again. Finally, the reduced ash is eventually strained, and the spagyric is complete, and the alchemical mercury, a thing destroyed and made anew, is complete. A liquid masterpiece ready for consumption and absorption into a higher form of life. Part 6, the rituals of CLIL, the Congregation of the Lamp of Invisible Light. Now begins a deep dive into the ritual of our CLIL. For the sanctity of this group, I will not be going over the ceremony line by line in such a way that the ceremony can be taken just by anyone and possibly profaned. Instead, I will generalize most verses of the ritual, enough that they will be understood in purpose, but also completely veiled. I will give information about things that one would see if they were present, enough that I can explain the way in which our magic operates. To begin, our setup is simple. On the altar, in the center of the temple, is the Book of the Law, and 3 magical weapons arranged in a triangle around the book, the lamp at the top in the most eastern part. These 3 items represent the 3 alchemical principles, synonymous with the first triad on the tree of life. They can also be used in a way private for the second triad on the tree, but that is a private matter and not necessarily used in our public rite. Around the altar are usually 12 chairs for the congregants, but no less than 4. one exactly in each quarter, and 2 between each of these. When 4 chairs, they represent the 4 faces of the cube of space, but when 12, they can also indicate the zodiac signs. Then placed on the walls of the temple in the 4 quarters, and also on the ceiling and floor, are the 6 planetary cards corresponding to east, south, west, north, above, and below. A 7th card, the universe, Saturn, is on the altar under the book of the law. A banishing is conducted and we begin. Throughout the ritual, there are many times that the officiant uses their staff to knock on the floor. The effect of knocking in a ritual is very intriguing. The sound is jarring and signifies a sealing that occurs when something profound is uttered or done. A rhythm of knocking can invoke energies akin to the number and battery of knocks. For instance, when Thelemites say will before eating, the short custom begins with a series of 3 batteries of knocks, 3, then 5, then 3. In this case, 5 is symbolic of the pentagram, the 5 elements, and the 2 threes are symbolic of 2 triangles. Altogether, this is symbolic of a pentagram in the midst of a hexagram. Single knocks on their own are much more profound, in a way, as 1 is the highest number in Pythagorean numerology. Besides sealing something as previously mentioned, a single knock can also be enough to awaken those present to the ritual, and it can also banish forces that are unwanted. Again, there are many times that a single knock occurs in the ritual, so suffice to say that most times when the officiant says something that is of utmost importance, and when they approach and begin to stimulate the 3 alchemical principles on the altar, a knock is the first thing to occur. The officiant's dialogue begins with the utterance of the law, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," to which the congregation replies, "Love is the law, love under will." The sanctuary is prepared and sealed with a couple of verses, and then something new was fairly recently added to the ritual. The entire congregation is asked to approach the altar. They are directed towards the visible object of worship, the altar, bearing the 3 principles and the book of the law. Symbolically, this is indicating the altar as akin to the innermost point of one's being, the invisible object of worship. Frater A.L. and myself had an interesting talk about the symbolic nature of due east as it pertains to ritual. Yes, in the north and western hemispheres of the earth, where we are, the sun rises due east, but out in space, where is east? Directions may one day be attributed to space that the entire human race will agree upon, but for now there is no reference for a compass in space, and thus astrophysicists must have their own ways of marking where galaxies are and what their orientations indicate about direction. So in a ritual that is taking place within the cube of space, a solid representation of the universe, which way is east? We align the cube so that the card, the Empress, Venus, is aligned with Earth's due east and the rising sun, but in many rituals, Crowley recommended or mandated that the magician's east should be towards Baleskine. That was his Qibla, the place he claimed to be responsible for the pivotal moment of his magical career as it pertained to the magic of Abramelin and attainment of his HGA Iowas. So if the Qibla is the place of invisible worship, and that is due east for Thelemites, we debated on changing the orientation of CLIL from due east facing the rising sun in New York City to northeast, the approximate direction of Baleskine. Either would work, but Frater Ale decided that instead of changing the orientation of the room, he would add a small part to the ritual that orients each congregant towards the altar and book of the law, so that they can begin to unravel the mystery that perhaps due east is within oneself, especially in the void of space, where gravity and magnetism function differently, and direction is relative to where one is traveling. From there, the next 3 parts of the ritual uses invocation of the Thelemic pantheon to activate the 3 alchemical principles and to extend light and connect the 6 faces of the cube via the 3 mother letters of Kabbalah, Aleph for air, Mem for water, and Shin for fire. Nuit as water on the altar is a grail, Hadit is fire via a censer, and Heru Raha is air via the lamp. Between the 3 invocations, the congregation gets to participate in the ritual. After Nuit is invoked, by interactions with and words spoken over the element for salt, a variation of the middle pillar is performed. It has been coined the 4 centers of light. Doth is not charged in our meditation, and the other four spheres are colored in the queen scale of color, but what is intoned is the verses of the stele of revealing uttered in Egyptian. Besides that, it is fundamentally the same as the classic middle pillar exercise. Also, a stretch/body scan is first done to center oneself, followed by guided rhythmic breathing, which is highly recommended to be maintained for the duration of the ritual. After Hadid is invoked by interactions with and words spoken over the element of sulfur, the congregation performs a mantra together using the word of the aeon, Abara Hadabara. What is interesting, though, is that the mantra is recited as one long continuous word, rather than being broken into one word, pause, then again, and pause, and again, etc. An example of this would be Mantra is a very useful tool in yoga. Besides being an affirmation where one is just simply focusing their intent upon concepts being repeated, uttering a word or phrase over and over actually has a strong effect on the left brain. The left brain has a way of dominating the mind with logical thinking and makes it hard to perceive spiritual matters in the moment. When the left brain is given something to do for an extended period of time, it releases its control and allows creativity of the right brain to take the reins and ideas from the unconscious mind to manifest. This is very useful in magic, as it allows for easier access to the astral realm, and over time, mantra will inevitably exhaust the left brain, forcing it into a docile state to perform spiritual objectives more easily. Moving forward, Heru Raha and the Holy Guardian Angel are invoked by several things occurring in rapid succession. Having the congregation approach the altar again, the officiant recites an invocation while holding up their candle. The congregation is instructed to project their own HGA or other spiritual guide into the flame of the candle. Immediately after the invocation, the congregation continues to focus on the flame, and everyone recites the commonly used part of Liber Resh. This focus truly charges the flame on the candle, which very soon will be used to light the lamp, the representation on the altar of alchemical mercury. Next, a chapter of a holy book is read or recited. Chapter 1 of Liber Legis is highly recommended, as it is a very common one which people have memorized. But again, any chapter from the holy books of Thelema is acceptable. In fact, I have experimented personally and publicly with almost every chapter of each holy book. Each one truly adds a different effect energetically to the ritual. Then comes communication, an epiclesis of a cake of light and wine. Here, I will speak about the general purpose of the host and wine in transubstantiation and magical intent. Consuming a Eucharist and wine that has been changed has become a very Christian concept, unfortunately. The Catholic Church has long used these as the main sacrament of their Mass. In ancient Greece, however, an epiclesis did not merely refer to consuming a sacred food during ritual, nay, the term actually meant appeal or invocation, as in a call to a deity to come forward into the presence of those seeking its communion. Already, I have used words that will direct the mind to the Catholic Church if one has been indoctrinated by them from early childhood. It would appear, at least to me, that the Church took such terminology over the ages and bent the ideas to their cause. They have long been the benefactors of ancient magic, but directed it towards a masculine monotheistic pantheon that created a mostly seeming male trinity. How erotic! Indeed, they use rituals of invocation, baptism, confirmation, and consumption of blessed foods for their masses to experience their religion. But these ideas are old and not originated by the Church. Beer has been a staple in the diet of mankind since Sumer, and even they had deities to whom beer was sacred. To drink during festivals and holy days in honor of that deity was a sacrament in and of itself. Indigenous shamanism from Africa, India, and South America had many sacred edible substances. Some were meat and bread, others had hallucinogenic or consciousness-altering effects. Those were probably most holy, as they opened the door to other realms. Even the Hindus have soma, if you look that up. All of these things in the right context can be sacraments, depending upon the situation. But bread and wine in particular did become widely popularized by the Christians because of the Last Supper. Quote, "And as they were eating, Jesus took the bread and blessed it, and brake it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, Take this and eat of it. This is my body. And he took the cup and gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." End quote. Here the Christians believe that Jesus has performed an invocation. They have horrible hang-ups and claim all magic is evil and sinful, and would never admit this, but here it is. They are Christ doing magic. Fast forward to present-day occultism and Aleister Crowley's teachings. Liber 15, the Gnostic Mass, and Liber 44, the Mass of the Phoenix, are two very prominent rituals of the Lima, where an epiclesis is consumed. In both, invocations are performed, intentions stated, and communication occurs where the congregation comes forward to take their bread and wine. In the EGC and other Thelemic clerical orders, priestesses and priests have gotten instruction directly from Crowley on how to make their Eucharist as per instructions from Liber Alve Legis, the Book of the Law, chapter 3, verses 23 through 25. I'll quote these. For perfume, mix meal and honey and thick leavings of red wine, then oil of abramelin and olive oil, and afterwards soften and smooth down with rich, fresh blood. The best blood is of the moon, monthly, then the fresh blood of a child, or dropping from the host of heaven, then of enemies, then of the priest or of the worshippers, last of some beast, no matter what. This burn, of this make cakes and eat unto me. This hath also another use. Let it be laid before me and kept thick with perfumes of your orison. So it shall become full of beetles as it were, and creeping things sacred unto me. Essentially, cakes of light are made from flour, honey, and the leaves at the bottom of a cask of wine, or if that is not available, it is common to boil down a rich port until it is reduced to syrup, and that is mixed into the flour and honey. Then there is blood or semen added to the mix, as also indicated in the passages. For a very thorough understanding of how to use blood magic, please refer to Magic, Book 4, Liber Abba, Part 3, Magic in Theory and Practice, Chapter 12, The Bloody Sacrifice. There, you may find a very comprehensive overview of why blood is used in magic. I say all of this to say that in our ritual of the lamp of invisible light, everything said applies near verbatim. The wine on the altar is turned into the blood of the saints who Our Lady, the Scarlet Woman, Babylon, drinks heartily. It is not the body or blood of Jesus Christ that we consume, but the blood of every Gnostic saint that is recognized in Aleister Crowley's book, Aha, and some who are acknowledged more recently, including females who have achieved sainthood. I will not veer off into a tangent on what qualifies a person to become a Gnostic saint, but suffice to say that they are holy, and the blood in our grail is the entire essence of their beings, which have been leached from their bodies and poured to the last drop into Our Lady's cup. Through Babylon we are drinking this sacrament. It has been transformed, as have the cakes, which have been on top of the Book of the Law, the whole ritual. It is poignant to add that in Dogma et Ritual de la Haute Magie by Eliphas Levi, the author explains and gives examples on transubstantiation as follows. By focusing the mind through belief, especially a group mind, on changing wine into blood, the power of this mind on the astral realm actually makes this occur. The more focus and intent, the easier it is to change a substance. That is the general premise, and yes, it works. Intent charges talismans and endows them with a specific power in much the same way. In CLIL's ritual, our orisons have been poured directly over the center point of the altar, and the cakes have absorbed these prayers and invocations. This happens in the following manner. The alchemical principles in a triangle on the altar and the 3 lines of light that connect the 6 faces of the cube all converge to form a central point that collects all of the energy invoked during our ceremony and directs it wholly into a single mass upon the altar, wherein lies the cakes on a paten. They too, like the wine, have been transformed into a sponge that has soaked up all of the ritual's energy. These consumed bring a portion of the light into the person consuming them. At that time, what occurs is this. The officiant sitting after the chapter of the Holy Book is read says the following phrases from Liber 418, the cry of the first Aether. Quote, I am speech, I am silence, and I am that which is beyond them. End quote. They stand and make 3 deosil circles around the altar, stating 1 verse per circumambulation, making a hard knock with their staff at the completion of each circle, and continue with the next verse. I am life, and I am death, and I am that which is beyond them. Knock. I am war, and I am peace, and I am that which is beyond them. Knock. I am weakness, and I am strength, and I am that which is beyond them. Knock. In actuality, one of these verses have been changed using different nouns, but I have omitted it and simply pasted the original words from Liber 418 so as to protect our ritual. When the officiant makes the 3rd circle complete, this is when the lamp is finally lit with a match that has been sparked on their votive candle that they've been using so far the course of this ritual. Words go along with the lighting that I am omitting, but then a large equilateral cross is drawn with the illuminated lamp above the altar. To briefly explain this portion of the ritual, the 3 deosil circles stimulate the energy in the cube in such a way as to invoke energy and bring the congregation up, Mount Abnejus / Mount Olympus. Lighting the lamp here is symbolic of Prometheus going to Mount Olympus and to take the fire of the Olympians. One at a time, first the officiant and then each congregant come to the altar in a deosil fashion. They are instructed to give holy bodily gestures and then are permitted to interact with the altar. First then, they purify themselves with the alchemical salt by dipping their finger in water, drawing a counterclockwise circle on their brow and stating, I am purified. They use the right index finger to feel the heat and smoke from the censer, thereby interacting with the alchemical sulfur. They take their finger to their forehead in the center of the drawn water circle, making a single point at the center they are in and stating, I am consecrated. And lastly, they make a fire triangle with their hands and peer through it at the flame of the lamp. The aim here is to extend the light of the lamp in a line directly into the sigil of the sun, or eye, upon their brows, stimulating their ajna chakra. When this is accomplished, they bring the triangle to their brow, making the sign of the eye in the triangle, and state, I am illuminated. They take the cake of light and wine in the most reverent of manners, think their magical intent into the sacraments, and consume them whilst gazing upon the altar under the light of the lamp. After the last congregant is seated from their epiclesis, the officiant takes their staff and the lamp and assumes the form of the hermit from the tarot. They now make 3 Widdershin counterclockwise circles, slow and in silence, making but a loud knock each time they pass the east. This now is the initiate, having climbed the sacred mountain of initiation and wielding the flame of Olympus, returning down to earth with the flame for mankind. Having sat watching and also performing this ritual myself, at this point, the entire congregation actually feels like it is being lowered down, from some great height. Indeed, while performing the ritual, I have frequently experienced the sensation that I was not merely walking in a circle on flat ground, but was actually descending on a great spiral staircase. Shortly after the ritual is closed with knocks of the staff and the phrases used in the Golden Dawn, Cobb's Compact, Conch's Compact, Light in Extension, a last blessing is recited upon the congregation, and there is a short, informal, and silent meditation upon the light emanating from the lamp on the altar. This concludes a breakdown of our ritual, and I am moving on to speak about some of my more profound magical experiences with the congregation. Part 7. My personal experiences with the congregation. By now, it should be obvious that I absolutely adore our ritual and the congregation of the Lamp of Invisible Light. In fact, this was my first public ritual I ever attended, and I am so glad that this was the case. I had been studying world religion for some years on my own. I was raised in the Roman Catholic Church and went to private Catholic grammar school. Around 2012, When I had a profound spiritual experience that left me with tons of questions, I began meditating very seriously and reading any spiritual and religious books I could find. I then began attending church on Sundays and holidays and speaking with the parishioner about my experiences, trying to make sense of them. He recommended that I look more into the Gnostics and see if I connected with anything there. I tried, and I also began speaking with Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, Rastafarians, and members of the 5%er Nation whom I was friends with. I read the entire Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert Mackey, and about Hinduism and the Gnostic Gospels, as well as the books of Enoch. My problem was then glaring to me. Aside from maybe Buddhism, none of these gave me a community that allowed and encouraged me to be myself. For you see, I am transgender and was depressed living a debased life trying to fit into the world as a male. I had begun to accept that I needed to transition, and I checked out Wicca. While my experience with Wicca was good, it was close, but not exactly what I needed. But it was close. The person leading the Wiccan chapter recognized my discomfort and I lucked out. They were also a practicing Thelemite and turned me onto the Golden Dawn, Kabbalah, and Aleister Crowley. They gave me a long book list and helped me until we parted ways in 2014. I read everything they suggested, and yes, I am one of those fools who set ablaze the Book of the Law after my first read within the confines of a Wiccan circle I had cast. This was at the grave mandate of my friend who suggested Thelema to me. It was now 2015, and yes, I had done my fair share of visual/silent meditations, prayers, fasts, and personal spellcasting. I even led a small ritual in the Wiccan group as a non-initiate, but I was then a novice, a lettered one, but novice nonetheless. That was when I sought out a Thelemite group. It occurred online in a solitary Thelema group. I asked for recommendations on group rituals in the NYC area. They recommended I check out CLIL. There was a meeting coming up soon and I went. I immediately honed in on the construction of the universe via Kabbalistic means, and I loved both the altar and invocations. It was what I was looking for. I went several more times for the ritual, but fate led me elsewhere, and for the next few years, I was busy in other orders with my teacher. I tried going once during that time, but the trains were down, and I took it as a sign that CLIL was not for me at that time. Eventually, I went back after going solitary again. You see, my teacher I had met had stage 4 cancer, and in our time working together, I dedicated a solid 80 hours a week or more to our work, but now I was lonely. I recall just wanting to be in a group ritual again, to be amongst the magi. I had transitioned in that time, and I thought it was very laughterful when the look of recognition came across the face of Frater A.L. after having not seen me in several years that passed. The ritual was as beautiful as ever, and he invited me back the following month, and I came gladly, and again, and again. Whilst in this ritual, I have experienced many strange things, some beautiful, some disturbing, all enlightening. Some of the minor and some even common experiences I've had include seeing beings in the astral that are present. Some of these are of the light and are permitted into the circle. Sometimes they sit in vacant seats appearing as physical congregants. The explanation is that this class of being is known to us as the secret guides. They have been written into the ritual and are quickly invoked in the beginning of the ritual by the officiant, who calls to them as the secret guides who protect us. Then outside the circle are those of a class that are not permitted into the circle. One might say they are low vibrational beings. Some may even be malignant. These range from being in human shape to all sorts of bizarre and hybrid animalistic forms. These, it is thought, come because they are attracted to the light. But some have a type of karma or natural inclination that does not allow them to safely participate. Some may simply wish to be near. Some may want to feed on energy. Regardless of why they come, they have been noted often, and it is for this reason, their presence, that it is widely discouraged for anyone in the congregation to leave the circle during the ritual. Another minor experience that has been noted by myself and others over several different rituals without knowledge of each other experiencing this is that we have seen hands that fade away at the forearms, which writhe up the altar as if praising what is upon it. They range from 6 to 10 hands. The exact number or reason is currently unknown as to their appearance. There have been other such experiences that upon contemplation did yield much spiritual fruit, but I want to move on to two very important experiences that actually led me to join the congregation formally. After leaving a certain order that will here remain nameless, I was reforging my path anew, and like I said, I was attending this public ritual once a month again. I had jokingly posted on social media that I was going to see many phoenixes that night, as I was to be in very good company with others who left said order that has no name. The ritual was absolutely wonderful, and we had just finished. Frater Rael turned the lights of the room on. I was gazing from my seat upon the light emanating from the still lit lamp on the altar. I stood looking at it, and suddenly a sharp, intricate flame rose up out of the lamp, spread wings, and sparks fell in all directions from it. I was looking at a stylized phoenix made almost in the likeness of a very impressive tribal tattoo of vibrant reds, yellows, and oranges. The wings flapped aggressively and it flew directly at me. I immediately jumped as it flew directly into my heart. A congregant present that day, a dear friend named D, was startled now and looked at me asking if I was all right. I explained what scared me so, and I was absolutely shocked that he nor anyone else present saw this. Some months had gone by, and I came to CLIL's monthly ritual again. At this particular one, I made sure to concentrate and perform the fourfold rhythmic breathing to the best of my ability for the duration of the ritual. At the reading of the chapter of the Holy Book, something amazing happened. That night, the officiant was reciting Liber L, chapter 1, and I was listening, looking upon the altar, and working on the breathing technique. My mind suddenly focused more intently on the book of the law upon the altar. I began to have a sensation that this focal point of the book and myself were merging into one being. Though all else existed, this was all that mattered to me in this moment. The book in relation to myself. I took my next breath, held it in, paused, and suddenly an immense amount of prana blocked out my eyesight with brilliant white light. Again, on the next breath, it became even more intense, and then all of a sudden the blinding white light refracted and became the most intricate kaleidoscope pattern I have ever seen in my life. I became instantly aware of the book of the law within this pattern, as well as myself and all other things infinitely in all directions. I knew then that by interacting and moving a single part of this colorful pattern could cause innumerable chain reaction type events, karma, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent, all just was. To this day, I do not know what this vision or mystical state of being might be coined, but it started with deep samadhi and moved on into something much more holy. I do not know if I was in this state for a second, a minute, or 10 minutes, such was the time dilation that occurred. That night, when I got home and recorded my experience in my magical record, contemplating it in conjunction with other experiences with the congregation, I knew that I had to join, as it would be vital to my path, and perhaps perilous if I had refused. We have now today a ceremony that was performed in Tijuana for wedding, and also a rite for death to help usher forth departed loved ones, and yes, 3 years ago in May, when my 16-year-old sister passed away of complications due to a kidney disorder she was born with, the congregation was there, and I was able to see her in the astral that night as Frater Ale helped her understand what happened and what she needed to do on the other side. That was a gift I doubt I can repay, and one I am eternally grateful for. While all of this may sound fantastical, it is truly my experience. And of course, this is only just my experience, and you must seek your own. But alas, if you wish to attend our group, we are here, and there are others out there which may be better suited to your path. Ask and ye shall receive, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Part 8. Joining the congregation. In closing, why do we do this ritual? In case it has not been made clear and you are asking, what is it that we do, and what can one expect if they join a sanctuary of the congregation? Our main purpose is to keep the light of the holy lamp ablaze, so that we may shine in the darkness for those who seek their way on the path. But what does that actually mean? It means that we host our ritual publicly, so that people can find and have access to the Lima and magic through people who are experienced with this art. The congregation is not a, quote, teaching order, unquote, such as AA, though within our ranks some of our members may be in AA or other groups. That is no odds to us. But if by finding them and speaking with them, you may come to earn their trust and inquire about their groups, though it's not what we do, it's also not discouraged. Furthermore, what we do may be summarized as follows. Firstly, the congregation trains its consecrated priestesses and priests in everything needed to perform this ritual, and to be a guide to the Lima for those who come to their sanctuary, much as is depicted in the symbolism of the tarot card, the Hermit. Secondly, we train our members in how to open a sanctuary on their own, so that the light of the lamp may be accessible to more people, or we might say that the light may be extended. For the future, we're working on a second level of working, much like Grand Lodge or Scottish Rite, each are to Freemasonry, so that as our congregation grows, we may grow with it. At such a time as this second level is operational, we will train how to participate in rituals for more advanced members, as well as how to conduct business meetings for the health of the congregation. At present time, we are small and operating in a less formal manner than this, but it is in the works and has been thoroughly discussed among our chiefs. I myself have experimented with more advanced techniques pertaining to our main ritual, including adding more intense meditations as well as Enochiana to our main ritual. I have been witness to rituals for weddings and aiding in the ushering of the recently departed congregants who came to us seeking aid for their loved ones that had very recently passed. There is also the original plates for LIL that are published in the back of the 1989 Magical Child version of the Goetia that I am not at liberty to explain more fully on how we might use them, though I can say that I have used them outside of the congregation in my art, and I could show some of that here right now. Upon taking the oath during a certain opening part of the ceremony, the priestess or priest is brought to the east with their staff. They take it upon their shoulders, and the officiant places their staff between the new member's staff and their shoulder blades, running down the length of their spine to the floor. They are little less than placed upon the cross as they take their oath. The votive candle is placed upon their feet and then their head to force vital energies upward. In short, this signifies being nailed to the cross, that the pain of their obligation signifies directly the suffering of mankind when in an unenlightened state, a state of sorrow that we believe can be alleviated with the law of the Lima through magic and mysticism. Thus concludes this lecture upon the history and revival of the lamp of invisible light. May understanding, union, and the ecstasy of the cup of Babylon be part of our journey, and may love be extended upon all. May the joy and force of the red flame and its wisdom shine in our hearts and minds, so that we walk towards light and liberty. May our life and our sacred duty be crowned with the blessings of the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. Abrahadabra. Tetelestai. Love is the law, love under will, ex lux, soror ra.